Welcome to 𝗩𝗲𝗋◄○○○○○○○○○○○○○○○○○○○○○○○○○○○○○○○○○○○○○○○○○○○○○○○○○○○○○○○○○○○○○○○○○○○○○○○○○○○○○○○○○○○○○○○○○○○○○○○○○○○○○○○○○○○○○○○○○○○○○○○○○○ your houseplants, check out my Patreon below. Today I'm going to talk to you about the top reasons why houseplants slow down growth. This is an alocasia, an 𝗩𝗏, and this is a good example of one of those reasons. So that's why I have this guy here right now. So these are the top reasons houseplants slow down growth, which is of concern if you've had a plant for a while, it's been looking really good, and then all of a sudden it starts to slow down growth. Then it's good to look at these various potential reasons why it slowed down growth to see if you need to make some changes so that the plant is okay. So the first area that I suggest looking at is watering. Improper watering is often the reason why a houseplant will slow down growth. Now that is either overwatering or underwatering. Both of these can cause problems. Now, underwatering causes, obviously, the plant gets very droopy and then it's very thirsty. And if you don't give a plant sufficient water, obviously it needs that water to grow, right? So it's going to just go into survival mode, especially if you drought the plant on a regular basis. So when it goes into that survival mode, it's just going to conserve any water that you do give it when you finally give it. So that's a reason why underwatering will cause that slowdown in growth. Overwatering will cause a slowdown in growth because what happens is when you keep the soil too wet too often, and overwatering is not watering a lot at once, but watering too often. So when you overwater, when you water the plant too often, the soil stays wet. When the soil stays wet, the roots stay wet. They don't have as much oxygen there's not as much oxygen to the roots, and fungal pathogens can get in there because they thrive in these wet conditions, and that's when you get root rot. Even if you don't get root rot, in really wet soil, you're going to get root dieback. When a plant's roots die back, there's not as many roots to create a healthy above ground plant. Remember, the most important part of the plant for the health of the plant is healthy roots. So if you start to have roots that are dying back and withering away and diminishing in that pot down there, you're going to get a slowdown in growth. Another reason is too big of a pot, having the plant in too big of the pot. And this ties in with what I was just talking about with too much wet soil at the roots and root dieback. When you have a plant in too big of a pot, and I have many videos on how you don't want to do that and what the correct ratio is, which is 2/3 plant to 1/3 pot on the bottom. When you have that big pot and the little plant, you're going to have a lot of root dieback. You're often going to get root rot as well. So that's another reason why the plant will slow down in growth. Nutrient deficiencies, so that NPK, nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, the macronutrients. If you're not giving the plant enough of that, the plant will slow down growth because it's not getting those nutrients it needs to rebuild cells and to photosynthesize and that sort of thing. So if you haven't watered the plant in a long time, or I haven't fertilized the plant in a long time, or maybe you have never fertilized the plant and it's been in the same soil for a while, the lack of fertilizer could very well be the reason that the plant has slowed down growth. And that's obviously a very easy thing to fix. When you do fertilize, use an organic fertilizer because what can happen, and that's going to be in the next reason why plants slow down growth, is if you use a chemical fertilizer and you use too much fertilizer, that will break down roots. So another reason on the opposite end of not feeding the plant enough is feeding the plant too much. So if you've been feeding the plant too much, the fertilizer can build up at the soil level, and fertilizers are high in salts, even the organic ones, although the organic ones are much lower in salts than chemical fertilizers. But even so, too much fertilizer at the root zone is going to break down the roots. Breaking down the roots, once again, the plant's going to slow down growth. Less roots, less above ground growth as well. So that's known as fertilizer burn. Okay, so another reason why you're going to get a slowdown in growth is pests. Especially pests like scale and mealybugs, because scale and mealybugs, what they do is that when they're busily munching away on your plant is they are sucking out of the plant leaves the chlorophyll. That's what they're feeding on. So when they're sucking out the chlorophyll, that weakens the plant. Also, them weakening the leaves makes the leaves not able to photosynthesize correctly. That's going to also cause a slowdown in growth. So you want to look for pests. If you've checked out these other things, the watering, etc., the lighting, which is another reason I have to cover in a sec. If all these things are okay, look very closely for pests. Okay, improper lighting is another thing. So not enough light or too much light. They can both cause the plants to slow down growth. It's really important to know what type of lighting your plant needs so that you don't give the plant too much light, because that stresses it and it goes into a shock mode, a protective shock mode, then it doesn't grow. If you don't give it enough light, then it doesn't have enough light to photosynthesize, and that will cause it to slow down in growth. So I do have an extensive playlist on how to grow various houseplants, including this beauty here. So check that out if you have come to this video to find out about a certain plant and then you're thinking maybe it is the lighting, then you can check out and see what kind of lighting that plant needs. Okay, another reason is time of year. Depending on where you live right now, I am in winter months right now. So when you are in the colder months of the year, most houseplants are going to slow down growth. Some of them substantially slow down growth. So, and that is because you may think, well, I'm indoors, I'm not out in the snow or whatever, but your house is still going to get colder in the winter months. Climate does affect your outdoor climate does affect your indoor climate, which will affect your houseplants. I have a video on that as well as many other videos, and if I haven't mentioned, I will be linking videos, any videos that I've mentioned and any videos that would help you with this as well below. Okay, so your plants do have a season, even though they're grown indoors, and they will slow down growth substantially in the colder months of the year. They're cycling water less quickly. This is a time when you don't want to fertilize them because they are doing that, cycling water and not even growing or hardly growing as well. So time of year. So if, say, a plant has slowed down growth and you're thinking, I'm not really sure when it slowed down growth, was it in the fall or was it when was it? Well, wait, if you've gone through all these other things and you're not sure and you're thinking, okay, maybe it's time of year because it doesn't seem to be any of these other problems, wait until spring. If the plant starts to put on new growth in spring, you're great. If the plant still is having problems in springtime, after you've been into springtime for 2 or 3 weeks, then you want to look again at this whole list and to figure out what's going on here. Another thing is the plant needs to be repotted. This goes along with the lack of nutrients, but it also goes along with the idea of fertilizer burn and salt buildup. So salt and as mentioned, the fertilizer will build up in the soil. The salts from the fertilizer will build up in the soil. Also, a lot of tap waters tend to be high in salts too. So if you haven't repotted the plant in a long time, it could very well that the plant is having toxic shock syndrome, buildup of salts in the soil, and that means that you need to get it into fresh soil. And I have a video on that as well, or maybe more than one video on that. So that's another thing to keep in mind. Now, it's generally not a good idea to repot in the winter months, but if you've gone through this whole list, the plant's looking really crummy, you're pretty sure it's the soil, maybe at one point you over-fertilized and you know you did, and you've tried to leach it, which means rinsing the soil, and it's still having problems, you can, in cases of emergency, you can repot in the winter months. If you do, I would suggest putting the plant on a heated seedling mat. They're heated after you've planted it, so you keep the soil warm, because the problem is when you repot in the soil and the plant already the plant's not growing hardly at all, right? And then you repot, plants always go into a bit of a shock and stop growing for a time too. So you could just have the plant sit there, and that's how loss happens with the repotting. So if you have a warm soil, that will help. But if you're not sure, just wait until spring and then repot in spring, which is a much better, even late winter, early spring, much better time to repot. Okay, the last thing is some plants naturally go dormant, and alocasia does that. And a lot of times this plant will just randomly go dormant and you'll be like, it doesn't even always coincide with the time of year, and you're thinking, okay, what happened? It's all the leaves fell off and it's a stump or something. So just let the plant be. At that point, if you determine that the plant slowed down growth and now it stopped growth because of dormancy, when a plant is dormant, you just want to go cut way back on watering. Just keep it slightly moist and keep it in a warm location where it has some natural light, and it will come back for you when it's ready, like this one did a while back as well. So there you go. The top reasons why houseplants slow down growth and what to do about it. Thank you for stopping by today. Please leave any comments about any indoor gardening tutorials you'd like to see. Remember to like, comment, subscribe, and share this video. And please check the bell if you'd like to be notified when new videos are released.